I promised you that I would talk about colors, how to pick them, how to apply them, but I actually realized when I started making this video, I really need to break it up because first you need to know why I pick the colors, like the strategy behind what direction I even start in before I actually apply it to the website. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video, the strategy, how I decide what version of the color range I work with, and go from there. And in the next video, I will tell you how I actually apply it to the website, how I generate the palettes, and those kinds of details. So that'll be the tutorial part. Today is more of the strategy part. But before I dive into that, if we haven't met before, my name is Caitlin and I run Launch the Damn Thing. I am a Squarespace educator and graphic designer, college educated, done all the things, and I have lots of tips to share because I've been around the block for a bit and I really feel like community over competition is where it's at. So I want to teach you what I have learned over the years so that you can skip the headache of trying to figure this out for yourself. All right, let's dive in. I want to start with my own website because I've niched myself into working with people that have vibrant and bold, maybe slightly unorthodox personalities. Because that's me, honestly. Like, that's why I've niched to that personality type. I work well with them because I am like that myself. And I picked a color palette not based on colors that I personally am drawn to, although I do love that mustard color, generally speaking. It doesn't look good on me, so I don't get to wear it much. But otherwise, none of the colors in my branding are my favorite colors. I picked them for a specific reason. Mostly because when I did my logo first, I decided to go with something that felt vibrant, energetic, fun, bold. And that's kind of how the rest of the brand developed from there. So let's switch gears. This is my full-ish color palette. You can recognize a lot of these colors, I'm sure. A couple of them just have lighter versions of the same color. I don't tend to use the white much in my website, except for little highlights here and there. For the most part, I really like the off-white because it just feels a little bit more authentic to me. So you can see how that color palette comes together in a website like this. Squarespace only gives you 5 colors for the palette itself, but you don't have to stick with just those 5. As you can see here, I'm using a lot of different color combinations. So the next one that I want to show you is a past client, Cotton & Crown Co. So this is her color palette. We added the 2 golds, but for the most part, we're using these 6 colors here. And in Squarespace, we're primarily using the black, the 2 greens, the light, and the brighter pink. So you can see how that comes together in her website over here. Her color palette is much softer, is more feminine, but without being overly pink. So that was one of my favorite parts about working on this project, is that it felt very feminine, cozy, soft, comfortable, without being like overly girly in the traditional way. And the reason for that is because the audience that we were targeting really needed this more soft approach. And she was also going to be selling products that specifically were charitable. And so we just wanted to have generally a softer, more inviting feeling. And I think that her color palette does that quite well. Let's go into her about page and you can see a little bit more of how that's applied. So this is a photograph that we pulled probably from Unsplash or something, but it's close enough to her brand's pink that it fit really well. We're using pops of color in here. Some of her oranges and golds are in her brand photos, and some of the headings are in color. Some of the textures and the backgrounds are on brand as well. And overall, we shot for colors that would not override or overpower the actual products she would be selling in the shop. So all of her colors sort of take a back seat to the beautiful things that she displays in her shop. Now, I do have to say, when she came to me, the logo was already done, color palette was mostly already decided, and so I didn't have tons of editing to do there. It was all pretty much done. We tweaked a couple of things here or there as we needed to for the website design. So this is an example of something that was established that came to me and I worked with it, and it worked really well. Next is Fred's Oral Prep, and I know what you're thinking. That sounds dirty. They know. I know, we're all aware, and no, it's not what you think. Fred's Oral Prep is a business, an educational business that teaches super yacht crew how to take their oral examination in order to get some certificate that they need to be in that industry. It's very dry material. But their business is actually Fred Wilson Marine. That's the name of the actual registered business. And the students have dubbed it Fred's Oral Prep because it is Fred's oral preparation for this exam that they are learning in the courses. And they just rolled with it because 1, it helps them stand out. 2, everybody was already using it. And 3, their audience is younger, generally speaking. They're targeting a group of people that understand the humor in this situation. Obviously, we had to go with blue. Their business was already established, and so blue was the main color. So we just picked that and grew out from it, including some more vibrant colors that would speak better to the younger audience in sort of a humorous way. So we have some softer blues here. We also have the very vibrant aqua, which is almost vibrating off the screen. And we also have a gold, which is just a complementary color to the blue that we chose, and an off-white color as well. So let's take a look at how that was applied on their website. So this is the home page. As I scroll through this, you'll notice that I'm trying to keep the very, very vibrant colors to a minimum where they're going to be too loud to be readable. So here we have it on the buttons and in the background. And here we have that vibrant aqua behind the button, but not the button itself because it would be a little bit too in our face. But we have lots of pops of color, and it doesn't feel quite so blue, solidly blue, as you might have thought by looking at the palette. And that's because we got creative with how we combined the colors together. On their About page, they're using their color palette for this fun illustration that no, I did not draw. One of the owner's friends drew that for them, and I thought it was pretty funny. Then we have some sort of split screen sections. The off-white reads as white, I think. So I really like that it's not a stark white. That's just a personal preference of mine, probably. Really taking advantage of the brighter colors to help draw attention to things that need to be in focus. So that's an example of how this palette came together. Might not be what you expected. Now let's go to Samantha Turner's. This is the last boudoir site that I did, and this was the palette that we developed for her. She did not come to me with anything in particular. She liked pink, but she didn't want to rely on that because she didn't want to be frou-frou boudoir, which I totally understand. That's probably why she came to me in the first place, because I don't typically do a lot of super feminine stuff. This is the palette that we landed on with lots of different sort of earth tone kind of colors, but still bold and vibrant enough for her line of work, and a few that sort of nod towards skin tones, which we did sort of on purpose. So here's how that came together. And we had lots of fun with texture, patterns, florals, earthy stuff, handwritten. All of this came together, and you can see the use of the palette is pretty variable. Got some of the green, some use of fun rainbow colors, textures, patterns. So I really like how that came together. It feels bold, but toned down. If the colors had been more vibrant, I think it would have been delivering a different message. Then let's look at Linda's My Safe Place to Land. So this is for a grief coach. We wanted this to be very soft. Her favorite colors are peach and purple. So I wanted to start with that just for her, because I don't think it's a bad thing for you to have colors in your palette that you personally love, but I want to make a version of the palette that is strategic for the business, that delivers the right message. So for example, a bright, fun, airy, light peach color that was high saturation would probably be the wrong tone for a grief coach that is dealing with a lot of sadness. Same thing for the purple. A bright, fun purple would probably be the wrong choice. So what we did was we took the saturation down on a lot of these colors so that we could still use them and they would still read as peach and purple for the most part, but we would take it down a notch, make it feel calmer, more sedated. And this is how that came together. So you can see it feels calm, soothing, safe. And this is actually a copy of the website. She's since shut down the original. She doesn't need it for the direction she ended up moving into, but I wanted a copy for my own version. So that's what we're looking at here. And some of the images didn't come through on the duplicate. So even though these colors aren't super dull, they're not in a grayscale or anything like that, there's still a lot of personality here without overpowering the type of people that would show up on this website. So we're still trying to be somber without being depressing. And I think we achieved a pretty good balance of that on this one. The next option was this color palette for an attorney. She is an international attorney and her palette was again already decided. The two blues and the gray and the navy, that was already established. We added the off-white and the orange. The orange was meant to be complementary up against the blue and the gray. And the off-white was just sort of a better choice, I think, for her material than a pure white was. So let's take a look at how that was put together. So for her website, she has all her own photos. So because of that, it was a little bit harder to pick ones that felt 100% or, really branded because they weren't ever really taken with that in mind. But we were able to pick from those photos that were close enough, and I think we did a pretty good job without having to massively edit a bunch of the colors. So underneath that we have accents in the orange, links and stuff like that are typically in the orange, and then the off-white is playing a big part in this palette. Got orange areas for stuff that wants to stand out, and luckily her branded photos fit this palette extremely well. So that was actually not done on purpose. The photos were taken prior to the website project. But when I chose the orange, I did that with this in mind. So that part was kind of strategic. So you can see how we're sort of using these unbranded photos. They're not necessarily color matching the brand, but they work with well enough, I think. So it's a very clean, very professional website, a little bit more so than I typically do. But this is an international attorney that specializes in family law. And again, it's a pretty somber, serious discipline. So we really wanted to make sure that we gave it the respect it deserved. And on the services page in particular, we used a lot of the orange to signify the frustration and the chaos that can ensue when something like this happens across borders. And then took it down a notch as we went down in the service page details and started bringing some of that calm back in. So you can see how we're transitioning from using the bright colors in certain circumstances to some of the calmer, more soothing colors in others. That's all a strategic choice based on the color psychology. The last one I want to run through is a little bit unique. We had more of a journey between getting from the original to the end result. This was the original color palette that she brought to me, and I felt like it was too monochromatic. That envisioning this in a website, I was having trouble visualizing how we can make things stand out if on their own those individual colors were too close together to each other to perceive them as different colors, if that makes sense. That's just something that I know from experience, but thankfully with something like coolers, you can actually visualize this. If you open the palette in the generator and click on visualize colors, you can kind of see what I mean. This feels very monochromatic, and it's a little too monochromatic. Even if we shuffle the color placement, it still feels like too much pink, basically. And we wanted it to have a different feel than that. So let's go back to the dashboard and see where we landed. So we toned those colors down, but I felt like it was still a little bit too monochromatic, even adding in the black and toning everything, the saturation levels down. Then we moved over here, we added the gold. She loved the addition of the gold, and so we expanded on that from there, and this is what we landed on. So this was the final color palette. So we can see here in my portfolio, the original, that's how it came together, and the new one, just so you can see the before and after. I don't always get screenshots of the before because I'm awful at forget. And she was so much happier with the final product. So let's take a look at that. This is where she stands right now. She's been running this and maintaining this website for, well, over a year, maybe 2. I can't believe it's been that long. So I think she's kept up with it pretty well. So you can see the little pops of gold are in unexpected places. The pink is not overpowering. There's a lot of contrast between the gold and the dark burgundy color. She still has some branded colors from her previous brand in her photos, but she's going to be updating that over time. And ultimately, I really don't think that's much of a big deal. It's still in the pink family. And even though that shirt or dress or whatever is louder, I think it still fits, actually. It fits her personality very well. She's very bright and bubbly, and I loved working with her. So you can see how this kind of comes together. Even though the photos themselves may not fit the color palette perfectly, they can still work themselves in without feeling like they're out of place. But the colors that you choose to use for all of the elements in the website, that's a different story. You definitely want to pick colors that resonate with whoever's going to be looking at this website and why. When you're choosing colors for a business, it's really important to remember who's going to be looking at the colors and what frame of mind are they going to be in. So if you're creating a website for a traffic company or transportation company, you might lean into transportation related colors like red, yellow, and green, like a red light, or maybe the bright construction colored orange cones that you might see in construction zones on transportation, like roads and those kinds of things. Caution tape, bright, loud colors. But if we're using that as an example, let's start with something primary. So if we're talking about red, yellow, and green, maybe we start with this one and then change this blue to a green. Green, light green. If we're doing something for a transportation company, this might be where you would start, right? Because you have black asphalt roads, yellow lines, white lines on the road, red light, yellow light, green light. But that's very loud. So if you want to take it down a notch and start to think about how can we dull this down so that it feels safe and not scary or dangerous, right? Because loud and vibrant colors are caution colors. And you don't want people to perceive this company as a cautionary tale, right? We're not warning people away from this company, where you're wanting to attract people to it. So the simple solution for something like this would just be to take the saturation out of a lot of these colors. And you can do that really easily with something like coolers by either picking a different shade of the same color, or you can actually click on this and just drag it toward the left, and you can see that took it down a notch. It starts to feel more safe. If we drag it into the darker, kind of more gray, now that green still feels very obviously green, but it's closer to maybe a dull grass. If we did the same thing to the red, we would drag it to the left and down and find something that felt red without being like, oh my God, that is like, stop what you're doing. That is a warning color. Red is a color that represents anger and passion, and you really do not want that to be front and center if you're trying to say we're a transportation company or we have top-notch employees that will treat you with kindness, right? Like the passionate anger color is just not going to cut it for that. Same thing for yellow. That's a cautionary color. So we can either just pick a lighter version of that color, but if that feels too pastel, then maybe we just take it more into the gold family. Already, hopefully you can see this feels a lot more calm. We can do the same thing with the black. It looks like that's in the purple family. That's a little unexpected. Let's take that maybe into more of a navy. There we go. It's still in the black family, but it's a little bit more violet. That kind of cools it down a little bit. It was a little warmer than that. And then maybe we want to, in the white, take that, yeah, that's what I thought. It was a little bit too cool of a white, so if we drag it closer to the yellow, it'll warm it up a little bit. Can put a little bit of yellow into it and brighten it up. And now we have a palette that feels entirely different than the one that we started with, right? This one feels safer, calmer. It still has nods to the colors you might expect in transportation, but without being overly obvious. And you could definitely even play more with this by adding additional colors, by lightening these up even further. You don't want to go into the pink family, obviously. You're changing the tone. Maybe this could be more in the red family, so that's a little bit less of a pink. So there's a lot of room to play with that. If we wanted to play with something like this, which is very modern color scheme, there's a lot of brands out there right now that are using something like this. For example, the razor company, Billy, uses very vibrant colors like this, but sort of toned down a bit. So if we wanted to go that route, we could easily lighten things up by just brightening things. And again, moving these colors a little bit towards the white and kind of gray side. So it's still a turquoise, but it's not a very bright, obnoxious turquoise. Could do the same thing with the pink. And I actually really like that kind of violet color, so we can move that over there. And don't be afraid to reorder these either. You gotta remember this is going to be used in a very specific way. Let's drag that yellow over towards the white just a bit more, because that is a very highlighter color. And I think we're going to have to darken up that black a bit because it's too close to the violet. We really want more of a contrast there. I think I'm going to move that into the purple family. There we go. That feels better. And then I think I want to warm up that white a bit as well. It's almost a very, very light lavender. It's got a little bit of purple in it. And you can see that when you click on this. So it's like at the top of the list of the purple. So even this one feels a lot different than the one that we started with. And we just lightened up the colors, narrowed down the tone of each color by removing some of the saturation out of it, the vibrancy. So if we look at some of the trending color palettes, this one's been trending for years. I swear, people love this one. It's very political feeling to me without being overly obvious that it's like red, white, blue. This one makes me feel like outdoorsy, something nature related, camping, hiking, nature focused branding of some sort. This one could be marine related, coastal. This could be like an Airbnb on the water, beach, lake, whatever, probably more beachy. This one would be more lakey. That's not a word. This one could be very ocean linery. This is reminding me of Fred's Oral Prep a bit. Let's see. This one could also be very coastal, but you can tell that has a totally different vibe than something like this. This would be more bright and fun, maybe appealing to a younger audience, whereas this one would be a little bit calmer, more soothing, and maybe appealing to an older audience. So don't discount what the colors actually do for the feeling that your business has, and ask yourself questions like, if my brand were a room, how would I decorate it if it was the front lobby and people were actually stepping into my space? How would I want them to feel? Would I have textures, patterns? Would I have white walls? Would I have colored walls? Would I have pops of color on the pillows? Would it be mostly a white space? Would I have lots of textures? Soft furniture, softer colors, louder colors? Would I have hardwood floors or soft floors? Would there be accent rugs? If you think about those kinds of details, you can figure out slowly through the use of color what you might choose to recreate that feeling, whether it's safe, vibrant, loud, adventurous, calm, somber, passionate, sexy. There's all these adjectives you can use, and I'll go into that in the next video. But if you really think about the personality of your brand and then look at the colors, put them together in a space, and then evaluate, does that color grouping make me feel these words, these adjectives? And that's when you know you're getting close to the good color palette that you want for your business. So I know that was a lot to throw at you, and a lot of it's not super well defined. It's just kind of something that you have to practice over time, play with until you find the right solution. I hope that today's video was insightful and helpful on some level for you. If you had an aha moment while you were watching, please in the comments let me know. I love to hear when you finally got that, oh, I got it moment. And in the next video, I will actually show you how to build the color palettes using something like coolers or the tools that I found from the Color Palette Studio and actually apply them in Squarespace strategically. So we've got the kind of mental part of choosing colors and the why started today, but in the next video, I'll show you the how. And that's all I have for this video, so I will see you in the next one. Bye!